There was a time when her attention felt effortless. She reached out first. She asked about your day. Conversations flowed naturally, and her energy toward you felt genuine, warm, and consistent. You didn't have to question it. You didn't have to analyze it. It just felt easy. And then, something changed. Her messages became shorter. The enthusiasm softened. The little things she used to do without thinking, she stopped doing them as often. She didn't disappear completely, but the difference was just enough for you to notice. And now you're left wondering, what happened? You replay conversations in your head. You look for mistakes. You question whether you said too much, or maybe not enough. It feels like the connection is slowly fading, and you don't know why. But here's the truth most people completely miss. When a woman stops chasing, it doesn't always mean she's losing interest. In many cases, it means something deeper is happening beneath the surface, something far more psychological than it appears. Because when emotions start becoming real, behavior changes. And if you misread that change, you won't just feel confused. You might unintentionally push the connection further away. So before you assume the worst, you need to understand what's actually going on. At the beginning, her effort is driven by curiosity. She's exploring you, your personality, your mindset, your emotional depth. There's a sense of openness in how she interacts with you. She asks questions, shares easily, and invests her energy without hesitation because, at this stage, nothing feels at risk. It's light, it's natural, it's exciting. But as the connection deepens, something subtle begins to change. She becomes aware of her growing feelings, aware of the emotional impact you're starting to have on her, aware that this connection is no longer just casual, it has the potential to matter. And when something begins to matter, people naturally become more careful. This is where her behavior shifts, not because she's losing interest, but because she's protecting it. Instead of acting purely on impulse, she becomes more intentional. Instead of constantly reaching out, she starts to pause. Instead of revealing everything, she begins to hold back, just enough to observe what's really happening between you. Not to play games, not to create distance, but to understand where she truly stands with you. This is the moment where most people get it wrong, because they focus on the surface level change, less texting, less initiating, less visible effort, without understanding the deeper reason behind it. What looks like withdrawal is often just a shift in emotional strategy. She's no longer just feeling the connection, she's evaluating it. When her energy shifts, your instinct is to react. You notice the change, and suddenly, what once felt natural now feels uncertain. That uncertainty creates pressure, and without realizing it, you start trying to fix something that may not even be broken. You text more than usual. You overthink your words. You try to bring things back to how they were before. But here's the problem. The moment you believe you're losing her, your behavior begins to change. You become slightly more anxious, slightly more reactive, slightly less grounded in yourself. And even if you don't say it directly, she feels it. Because attraction at this stage isn't just about interest anymore. It's about emotional stability. She's no longer paying attention to how often you reach out. She's paying attention to how you handle the shift. Do you stay consistent? Do you remain calm under uncertainty? Or do you start seeking reassurance and control? This is where many people unintentionally push the connection away. Not because they lack value, but because they misinterpret the moment. They assume her reduced effort means something is wrong, so they try to compensate by doing more. But instead of improving the connection, this creates imbalance, and imbalance changes the dynamic. What once felt natural now feels forced. What once felt mutual now feels one-sided. And that subtle shift is enough to create distance. Not instantly, but gradually, all because the situation was misunderstood from the beginning. When her feelings begin to deepen, her focus naturally shifts, from expression to evaluation. In the beginning, everything is driven by emotion. She responds based on how she feels in the moment, open, curious, and unfiltered. But as the connection grows, that emotional flow becomes more thoughtful. She starts asking herself questions she didn't consider before. Is this connection stable? Is he consistent over time? Can I trust what I'm starting to feel? These questions aren't a sign that something is wrong. They're a sign that something is becoming real, because the deeper the emotion, the greater the vulnerability. And when vulnerability increases, so does the need for clarity and emotional safety. So instead of moving closer automatically, she slows down. She observes. She pays attention to the details that didn't matter before: your consistency, your reactions, your emotional control, and how you handle moments when things feel uncertain. This is where the dynamic becomes more psychological than emotional. She's no longer just experiencing the connection, she's studying it. She notices how you show up when the energy isn't as high. She notices if your behavior stays the same or starts to shift. She notices whether your confidence is stable or dependent on her attention. And most of this isn't something she's consciously analyzing step by step. It's something she feels. Because at this stage, attraction evolves into something deeper. It's no longer just about chemistry or excitement. It's about trust, consistency, and emotional security. So when her behavior becomes quieter, it's not because she's disconnected. It's because she's paying closer attention than ever before. When she stops chasing, she's not looking for you to do more. She's watching to see if you stay the same. Because anyone can appear confident when everything feels certain. When messages are frequent, energy is high, and attention is consistent. In those moments, it's easy to feel secure. But when that consistency softens, everything changes. That's when your true emotional state becomes visible. This is the space where she begins to observe more carefully. Do you remain calm or do you become reactive? Do you stay confident or start seeking reassurance? Do you trust the connection or try to control it? These subtle shifts in your behavior reveal far more than anything you could say directly. Because at this stage, attraction is no longer built on intensity, it's built on stability. She's not testing you in a calculated or manipulative way. This is a natural psychological response to emotional investment. When something starts to matter, people want to feel safe within it. And safety doesn't come from excitement alone. It comes from consistency, emotional control, and grounded behavior over time. So when her energy becomes quieter, she's creating space, not to distance herself, but to see what fills that space. Do you bring calmness into it, or do you fill it with pressure? Because how you respond in this phase doesn't just influence the connection, it defines it. When she stops chasing, she doesn't disappear. She changes how she shows up. Her presence becomes quieter but more intentional. And if you're only looking at frequency, you might miss it completely. Because now, her actions are no longer driven by impulse. They're driven by awareness. You may notice that she reaches out less often, but when she does, there's more meaning behind it. Her words carry weight. The conversations might be shorter, but they feel more focused and genuine. She's not trying to fill space anymore. She's paying attention to what actually matters. You might also notice that she observes more than she expresses. She listens closely. She responds thoughtfully. She becomes more aware of your tone, your timing, and your consistency. It's subtle, but it's there. And this is where many people misread the situation. They assume less effort means less interest. But in reality, it often means a shift in how that interest is expressed. She's no longer trying to build the connection through constant interaction. She's trying to understand if the connection can hold without it. This is what recalibration looks like. She's adjusting her energy to see if things feel balanced, if the effort is mutual, if the connection flows naturally without being pushed. So instead of asking, why is she doing less? The better question is, what is she paying attention to now that she wasn't before? Because that's where the real answer is. This is the stage where many connections begin to fall apart, not because her feelings changed, but because your response to the situation did. When her energy shifts, it creates uncertainty. And for most people, uncertainty feels uncomfortable. So the natural reaction is to reduce that discomfort as quickly as possible. But in doing that, many people make mistakes that quietly push the connection further away. The first mistake is overchasing. You try to bring back the same level of attention she once gave. You text more, initiate more, and attempt to recreate the earlier dynamic. But instead of restoring balance, this creates pressure. The second mistake is seeking constant reassurance. You start needing validation to feel secure. You look for signs, ask indirect questions, or rely on her responses to stabilize your emotions. And this shifts your energy from confident to dependent. The third mistake is over-explaining. You try to clarify everything, your intentions, your feelings, your actions. But what should feel natural starts to feel heavy and forced. And the fourth mistake is becoming inconsistent. Instead of staying the same person she initially connected with, your behavior starts to fluctuate. One moment you're confident, the next you're uncertain. That inconsistency creates doubt. These mistakes don't usually cause immediate disconnection. They create gradual distance. Because what she's looking for in this phase isn't perfection, it's stability. And when that stability disappears, the connection starts to feel less secure, even if the feelings are still there. So what should you actually do when she stops chasing? The answer isn't to chase harder. And it's not to pull away or act distant either. It's to stay grounded. This is where your mindset matters more than your actions. Instead of reacting to every small change, you begin to respond with awareness. You don't rush to fill every silence. You don't try to force conversations. And you don't let temporary shifts control your behavior. You remain steady. You still show interest, but without pressure. You still engage, but without overextending yourself. You still communicate, but without needing immediate validation. Because confidence at this stage isn't loud or performative. It's calm, it's consistent, it's controlled. And that's what creates emotional safety. When she senses that you're not easily shaken by changes in her behavior, something important happens. Her guard begins to lower. The hesitation she felt starts to fade. The need to overanalyze the connection becomes less intense. And gradually, her natural curiosity begins to return. But this time, it's deeper and more intentional. Not driven by excitement alone, but by trust. Because trust isn't built through constant attention, it's built through consistency over time. And consistency is revealed most clearly when things are uncertain. So instead of trying to win her back, understand this. She hasn't left. She's simply observing. And when you meet that moment with calm confidence instead of emotional reaction, you don't just maintain the connection, you strengthen it. At the start, attraction brings people together. It's about chemistry, excitement, and mutual curiosity. But when she stops chasing, the dynamic moves into a deeper stage. Alignment. Alignment isn't about intensity. It's about consistency, mutual effort, and emotional balance. Now, it's no longer just about whether she likes you. It's about whether the connection feels steady, secure, and sustainable. She's observing how you respond in the quieter moments, when attention is softer and energy isn't at its peak. She's looking for reliability, composure, and presence. This is where most people fail. They try to recreate the initial spark, assuming the same behaviors will keep her interested. But what matters now isn't more effort, it's better alignment. You don't need to chase her attention. You don't need to over-explain or perform. Instead, you need to remain consistent, calm, and grounded. Your role is to demonstrate that the connection can exist naturally, without forcing it. Because when alignment occurs, the relationship moves beyond initial attraction. It becomes a mutual, sustainable dynamic where both sides feel emotionally safe, secure, and valued. And this is the stage where deeper connection begins. Trust is formed, boundaries are respected, and the bond strengthens in ways that initial excitement alone could never create.